By the spring of 1948, Samuel Hayes had built a life so dazzling it seemed immune to decay. Yet beneath the brightness, something rotten festered, an unease that clung to his every success. The morning headlines still praised his business ventures. His name shimmered across financial pages as Chicago's golden boy. But within his offices, whispers grew, contracts delayed, accounts questioned, partners restless. It was a bright day, painfully bright, the kind of afternoon when sunlight exposed every imperfection. Samuel stood before the mirror in his penthouse, tying a silk tie, the same way he had done countless times. Yet the reflection staring back at him no longer looked like the man he imagined. His eyes had hardened, his mouth set in a line carved by years of calculation. Behind him, Clara's voice floated from the bedroom. "You're meeting Langley again?" she asked, her tone deceptively light. "Yes." He says it's urgent. Clara emerged, dressed in a soft gray gown, her beauty muted but still commanding. Everything is urgent with men like Victor Langley. You know what that means. Samuel turned, impatient. "You think I don't know how he operates?" "I think you trust him more than you should." "Trust has nothing to do with it," he said. "He gets results." She walked closer, her heels tapping softly against the marble floor. "Results are temporary, Sam. Alliances, real ones, are what last." "You've forgotten that." Samuel met her gaze. "No, I just learned that alliances break when the money runs out." Her lips curved faintly. "Then maybe the money shouldn't run out." She said like a dare, one that struck a nerve. The meeting with Victor Langley took place in the downtown office overlooking the river. Victor, with his slicked hair and perpetual smirk, poured 2 glasses of whiskey before speaking. "Sam, we got a problem." Samuel leaned back in his chair, eyes narrow. "What kind of problem?" "The federal auditors are sniffing around your contracts. Wartime logistics, post-war reconstruction deals, the works." Samuel's voice sharpened. "We covered our tracks." "Mostly," Victor said, sipping his drink. "But there's one deal, the steel transport for the Navy yards. That's got a paper trail longer than a preacher's sermon. Someone's been talking." "Who?" Victor shrugged. "Could be anyone. A clerk, a rival, maybe someone closer." Samuel felt a flicker of irritation. "Closer?" Victor gave a lazy grin. "You're a smart man, Sam. You don't need me to draw the map." For a moment, silence filled the room. Samuel's mind raced. Names, faces, possibilities. Clara's face surfaced among them, beautiful and calm, but unreadable. He pushed the thought away. No, she wouldn't. She couldn't. Still, when he returned home that evening, her perfume filled the air before she did. She was sitting by the window, reading the evening paper. "Rough day?" she asked without looking up. Samuel dropped his briefcase onto the table. "You tell me." She raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" "Meaning, I'd like to know if you've been having any conversations lately with people outside our circle." Her expression cooled instantly. "Are you accusing me of something?" "I'm asking a question." "Then let me answer it clearly." She folded the newspaper and stood, her eyes flashing. "No, I haven't. But it's interesting that you think I might. Maybe it says more about you than about me." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," she cut in. "You meant every word." There was a long pause, the kind that fills a room like smoke. Then, softly, she said, "You've built walls around yourself, Sam. Even I can't see through them anymore." He looked at her then, really looked. The woman who had once been his muse now felt like a stranger living in his shadow. "Maybe that's the only way to survive," he said quietly. Clara's smile was small, almost pitying. "Or maybe it's the first step toward falling apart." Over the following months, the walls did begin to crumble. Investigations deepened. Federal inquiries led to newspaper headlines. War contracts under scrutiny. The articles didn't mention Samuel by name at first, but his associates whispered nervously, and investors began to withdraw. Victor Langley vanished. One morning, his office was found empty, his desk cleared. No note, no explanation. Samuel knew what that meant. Someone had offered Victor a better deal, or worse, protection in exchange for information. Either way, it was betrayal. And then came the letter. It arrived with no return address, delivered by hand. Inside was a single sheet of paper with one sentence typed neatly. The higher you climb, the longer the fall. No signature, no trace. But Samuel didn't need one. He knew whose words those were. One evening, Samuel arrived home to find Clara gone. Her clothes missing, the drawers empty. On the dining table lay a single envelope. Inside was a note written in her looping, elegant script. Asterisk, I warned you, Sam. I warned you about fire. You thought you could control it. You can't. By the time you read this, I'll be gone, and so will everything you built. Clara, asterisk. Samuel stared at the note for a long time, his mind blank. Then he laughed, a hollow, disbelieving sound that cracked into something almost like a sob. The next morning, federal agents arrived at his offices. Contracts seized, records confiscated. By noon, the papers had his name in bold print. Hayes Empire under investigation for fraud and corruption. The fall began swiftly. Business partners turned their backs. Employees fled. Former allies became witnesses. Within weeks, Samuel's fortune evaporated. His penthouse, his cars, his reputation, gone. The same city that once celebrated him now whispered his name with contempt. He stayed in the penthouse for as long as he could, living among the ruins of his empire. One evening, a storm broke over the lake, lightning flashing against the skyline, rain slamming against the glass. Samuel stood on the balcony, drenched, staring at the horizon. For the first time in years, he thought of his father's words. Fire will warm you, but it'll burn you down just the same. And he realized then that every decision, every compromise, every lie, had led him here to this moment. He had wanted to conquer the world, but in the process, he had only built his own cage. 2 weeks later, the courts froze his assets. Reporters camped outside his building. When he finally stepped out, hat pulled low, they shouted questions. Mr. Hayes, do you regret your choices? Was Clara Winslow your partner in fraud? Will you testify against your associates? He said nothing. He simply walked past them, down the wet, glistening street, alone. That night, he bought a one-way train ticket to Kansas. As the city lights faded behind him, he stared out at the dark fields rolling past, empty and endless. He had escaped Millstone once, dreaming of gold. Now he was returning to it with nothing but dust. The train from Chicago reached Millstone, Kansas, just before dawn. The station looked smaller than Samuel remembered, just a wooden platform, weathered boards, and a rusting sign that creaked in the wind. Dust swirled to the pale light of morning, settling on his shoes as if to claim him back. He stepped off the train with a single suitcase, his coat worn thin, his face older than his years. The conductor gave him a polite nod, unaware that this man, quiet and nondescript, had once been a name on every business page in the Midwest. Millstone had not changed much in 15 years. The same dry field stretched at the horizon. The same wind carried the scent of soil and regret. The Great Depression was long over, but the land still bore its scars. The Hayes farmhouse sat on the outskirts, half-collapsed, roof sagging, its windows staring empty like blind eyes. Samuel walked slowly toward it, his footsteps crunching against the gravel road. The morning sun was rising, spilling gold across the horizon, that same golden sky he had once stared at as a boy, dreaming of escape. Only now it seemed different. Not a promise, but a reminder of everything he had lost. Inside, the house was quiet. Dust coated every surface. The air smelled of abandonment and memory. In what had once been the kitchen, a few faded photographs lay scattered on a counter. His father holding a newborn calf, his mother at the stove, his sister Annie in pigtails, smiling. Samuel picked up one, his mother's face, lined but kind, and for the first time in years he felt tears sting his eyes. He found a letter on the table, yellowed and unopened, addressed to him in his mother's handwriting. He sat down and read, "My dear Samuel, if this letter reaches you, it means I've gone home to your father. Don't grieve too much for me. I had a full life, though not an easy one. I am proud of you, even if the world turned against you. Remember, my son, grace is not found in gold, but in forgiveness. Come home when you can, not to reclaim what was lost, but to find peace where it all began. With love, Mother. He sat there for a long time, the letter trembling in his hands. Outside, the wind whispered through the fields, the same wind that had carried his boyhood dreams away. Now, it seemed to be calling him back to himself. Later that morning, Samuel walked to the small cemetery on the hill behind the farmhouse. The grass was overgrown, the stones weathered. He found his father's grave first, then his mother's beside it. Kneeling there, he placed the letter on the soil. "I did what I thought I had to," he whispered. "I thought I could build something worth the pain, but I built it wrong." A bird called somewhere in the distance, its cry sharp against the silence. Samuel stayed kneeling, his hands pressed against the earth. For years he had chased the idea of control, of bending the world to his will, only to find that the world had a will of its own. He spent the next weeks repairing the farmhouse. With each nail hammered, each board replaced, he began to feel the ache of his own redemption, small, slow, imperfect. The locals recognized him now and then, though they pretended not to. Millstone had a way of forgiving silently, through distance and time. One afternoon, as he worked on the porch, a car pulled up. A woman stepped out. His sister Annie, older now, with lines of worry etched around her eyes. "Sam," she said softly. He turned, almost afraid to meet her gaze. "Annie!" For a moment, neither spoke. Then she crossed the yard and hugged him tightly. "You came home," she murmured. "I didn't know where else to go." She smiled sadly. Sometimes home is the only place left. They sat on the porch until the sun began to set, sharing memories of their parents, the farm, and the years between. Annie told him about her children, the struggles, the small joys. Samuel listened, feeling both distant and close, as if part of him had finally stopped running. That night, he dreamed of his father. John Hayes stood in the field, the horizon burning gold behind him. His voice was calm, steady, the same as it had been when Samuel was a boy. "You finally came back," his father said. "I lost everything," Samuel replied. His father shook his head. "You found what matters." Samuel woke with tears on his face and the dawn filtering through the cracks in the roof. As the weeks passed, word from Chicago trickled in through newspapers. Clara Winslow had resurfaced in New York, her name attached to another businessman's fortune. Investigations continued, but the world had already moved on. Samuel's story, once sensational, had become just another cautionary tale. He no longer cared. Each morning, he watched the sun rise over plains, the light painting the sky gold, the same color that had haunted him all his life. But now it no longer looked like a promise of glory. It looked like grace. One afternoon, while mending the fence by the road, Samuel heard the rumble of a car engine. It slowed, then stopped beside him. The driver leaned out, a young man in a suit, his eyes bright with ambition. "Excuse me," the man called. "I'm looking for the old Hayes place. I heard a man named Samuel Hayes used to live here, built a business empire in Chicago before it all came down. I'm writing about him." Samuel wiped the sweat from his brow, meeting the young man's eager eyes. "You found him," he said quietly. The young man blinked. "You're him?" Samuel nodded. "Once." The writer hesitated, then asked, "Do you regret it? Everything that happened?" Samuel looked past him, toward the endless fields glowing beneath the late afternoon sun. The sky stretched wide, golden eternal. "I regret forgetting who I was," he said finally. "Not where I ended up." The young man waited, but Samuel said nothing more. The car drove away, its dust trailing behind like a ghost of ambition past. That evening, as twilight deepened, Samuel sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, the horizon burning with that familiar golden hue. He thought of the journey, from dust to gold, from gold back to dust, and how every light cast a shadow. He thought of Clara's laughter, of Walter Grayson's warnings, of his mother's letters. And he smiled, not with pride, not with bitterness, but with understanding, because he finally saw it. The golden sky had never been a promise of greatness. It had always been a lesson that glory fades, but grace endures. As the sun dipped low and the first stars appeared, Samuel whispered into the wind, "Fire will warm you, but it'll burn you down just the same." Then he leaned back, closed his eyes, and let the night take him, peaceful at last beneath the golden sky. Kindly subscribe to our channel for more stories.